the periodic table. I am not going to have you reproduce it. I am not going to have you have to refer to it. We are simply going to admit that it exists. That's pretty much the depth we're going with the periodic table. So of these 112 substances, 92 occur in nature. And then we have our 4 main substances. These are the 4 major substances that are found in all living things: nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. I want to talk to you a little bit here in just a second in a little more depth about these 4, because these are 4 really important elements, and without them, life cannot exist. So anybody who's literally been to school at any time in their life has seen this periodic table. Again, I'm not going to have you reproduce it. I'm not going to have you have to refer to it. Really, the depth we're going is the maximum. I'm going to ask, get my pen going. I am going to ask that at least when we get into nutrition, that you become familiar with the chemical symbol for some of these elements, because that's how we refer to them in veterinary medicine. And we are going to talk a little bit about the atomic number and the atomic weight and what makes those up. But again, I'm not going to have you have to refer to this. All right, let's talk about our major elements. These are the elements required for all life. I actually took a really interesting course through edX. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of edX. It's fabulous. You can take college level courses in literally any subject you ever wanted to ever for free. Now, you know, like you can pay like 25 bucks and get your certificate. I never did. It was mainly bragging rights and to have something to do. This was before I started my bachelor's degree. And I just needed something. I don't know, my brain always wants something. My brain always wants to be learning stuff. So what edX is every major university on the planet offers these free classes. And so I've taken some really interesting ones. I took a class on sociology and herd mentality, how humans follow the direction of other humans. It was really cool. And I also took a class on the search for another livable planet like Earth, and what would have to be found on that planet to make it a livable Earth-like planet. And it boiled down to these 4 elements. Oxygen. Well, obviously, we require oxygen. Oh, so Zoe earned a bachelor's in sociology. Fun fact. So that whole thing about herd mentality, it was so interesting. You know, like where one person starts laughing and everyone else just starts laughing, even if they don't know why. Oh my goodness. So if you have in all of your free time, yeah, I know, right? There's literally, sky's the limit. Go into edX, it's EDX. And I have gotten certificates or courses from Queensland University in Australia. I have a couple from Columbia University. I have one from Stanford. I used to take these all the time. I got one on pandemics. I took a course in pandemics. That one was through, I think that one was through Cornell. So yeah, I am a graduate from all of these major top universities. So there's feather in the cap for me. So anyway, oxygen. Obviously, we need oxygen. Oxygen, the chemical symbol is O. Oxygen really is #1 requirement. Every animal on the planet pretty much is dependent on oxygen in some way, shape, or form. And then we have carbon. Well, carbon are organic molecules. And carbon really are the building blocks for a lot of the bigger molecules that make us up. Things like carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have a carbon backbone, and without that carbon backbone, we would not have carbohydrates. And we, as well as pretty much every other animal on the planet, need carbohydrates to satisfy certain physical needs, certain nutritional needs. And without carbon, we would not be able to satisfy that. Not to mention that we ourselves are carbon-based beings. Hydrogen. Well, hydrogen mixed with oxygen gives us one of the things that is most important for our life: water. We are water-based beings. We are, in fact, water people. Greater than 60%, maybe upwards of 70% of our physical makeup, water. I mean, we don't often think about that because we only think about water in terms of pee, right? And you're like, oh, I'm just going to pee. Well, let's think about the other things that contain water, literally everything. When we start talking about the cell and the makeup of our cells, inside of our cells, again, this is all from basic high school biology class. Inside every single cell, there is this jelly-like substance called cytosol. Cytosol, water-based. Your blood flowing through your blood vessels right now is made up, if you want to go very, very simply, is made up of cells and water. Without the water, your blood turns to sludge, your heart fails, and you die. Your, excuse me, your intestines move food and fluids through it because of liquefaction. Everything that's moving through your intestines right now is liquefied. The globe of my eye is like a grape. It is fluid filled. So every single nook and cranny, every single cell, fluid. And that's because of the configuration of these hydrogen and oxygens. Finally, we have nitrogen. And nitrogen, super important because it is what helps to make up proteins. We are also protein-based. Protein is made of amino acids. Amino acids, remember we talked yesterday about Legos? Amino acids are the Legos that make up our amino acids. And basically amino acids, these proteins, make up everything else in our body. Everything that's not water is protein, pretty much. And we often think, okay, protein muscle, right? When I eat the steak, I'm eating the skeletal muscle of a cow. When you eat the delicious ribs, you're eating the skeletal muscle in between the ribs. However, let's think about other things that are made of protein. Well, all of your smooth muscle, okay, any kind of muscle. If it's a muscle, it's made of protein. But the other thing is we have DNA. DNA, proteins. The nucleotides that make up your DNA are made up of 4 separate amino acids, which are proteins. Now, as your body is breaking down these proteins, right, because we got to separate the Legos, it's releasing this nitrogen. And that's going to be really important when we get to nutrition. Because of the high nitrogen, all proteins contain about 16% nitrogen. And because of this high nitrogen, our bodies have to get rid of anything excess. And the way that we get rid of excess nitrogen is through our urine, through our kidneys. And so this is important if we start dealing with animals with some kind of kidney compromise. Maybe they've gotten old and their kidneys are starting to fail. We're going to want to really reserve the amount of protein that they have because of the amount of nitrogen. Oops, skipped one. There we go. So those were our major elements. Here we have our minor elements. These are elements that are found in the body, but just not in as large a capacity. So, and we're going to talk about these in great detail when we get to nutrition next term. So first off, we've got calcium. Now we all know calcium builds strong bones. Unless you've been hiding under a rock for your entire life, you have heard that calcium builds strong bones. But here's some other things that calcium does, really super interesting. Kind of give you a tickle for what's coming up in anatomy. For you to be able to move and flex and have mobility, bam, calcium. It's not just providing the strength for the bones that the muscles attach to, but it is causing your actual muscles to contract. Without calcium, that can't happen. So I am going to, what am I doing? What am I doing? So I'm just going to kind of get you a tickle, get you interested in this, because I find this really fascinating. All right, so muscles. I'm not going into great detail. You're going to get a whole chapter on nothing but muscles. But this is pretty cool. So the way that your muscles are created is kind of in this pattern, like this. And there's this sort of curtain. Now, obviously, am I simplifying it right now to the nth degree? Of course I am. It's kind of this curtain right here. Actually, not a curtain. What am I trying to say? An attachment. I don't know, my brain's not working. An attachment. So when my muscles get ready to contract, and really that's all muscles do. The only thing muscles do is contract. That's it. I know, Doug is just not on the wheel right now. Man, it's Friday. All right, so when your muscles contract, we have these units that contract to the center. So I have one unit contracting here, one unit contracting here to the center. That's what causes my muscle to move my arm. The problem is that in order for that to happen, I need to have calcium flood into these cells to allow the interaction between these filaments. Without calcium, that doesn't happen. We often, if anyone has, oops, I did the wrong one. If anybody has any interest in going into large animal medicine, food animal medicine, like cows, you're gonna see this calcium deficiency pretty commonly. In fact, it's called a downer cow. And because of the lack of calcium, usually it's because you overmilk them or they have a calf that's too big and they've depleted their calcium and they physically can't contract their muscles, they can't move. Calcium is also super important for us to send messages to and from my brain. Nerve impulse transmission. Second, we have phosphorus. Phosphorus helps us utilize energy-producing nutrients. The other thing that's not mentioned here is phosphorus is also super important for bone health. In fact, calcium and phosphorus are what we call BFF. Okay, there's my heart. And so your body's going to maintain this calcium and phosphorus in a specific ratio, which is a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every little calcium, we need to have a phosphorus because they're BFF. And this is going to be a really important point, again, when we get into nutrition. Potassium, my favorite mineral. It is the mineral that is featured in The Perfect Murder. Yes, boys and girls, I'm going to teach you all about The Perfect Murder. They said it could not be done, and to those people, I say nay, nay. Can be done, and I'm going to prove it, but not right now. So what potassium does, potassium is super important in your nerve function. Potassium is what helps your nerves whisper the message into the next nerve, sending the message along. Sulfur is found just like nitrogen in most proteins. Sodium and chloride, or here it says chlorine. Sodium and chloride are two different elements, but we very often talk about them at the same time because they are often bonded together. They're going to be the thing that I use as the example for one of our bonds that we're going to talk about. And they are super important, again, in nerve transmission. And then finally, we've got magnesium, which helps transfer energy around your body. So those are our minor elements. And these are our trace. I'm not going to go through these. You can read the list on your own. There are a few that we are going to go into detail when we get into nutrition, when we get into the minerals section of nutrition. We're going to talk about iron, manganese, chromium, copper, zinc, selenium, and iodine. Those are the big ones in our companion animal nutrition. Iron, okay, here's a little funny for you guys. So you know that iron is not with the designation I, right? That's iodine. Iron's chemical symbol is Fe because it's called ferrium. And it's this that proves my point. Are you ready to have your mind blown? Iron Man. Always ready? Here it comes. Iron Man should have been a woman. I will prove it to you right now, you naysayers. I see your faces.
Awesome.
So
What is the chemical symbol for iron?
Fe.
Give me another term for man. Iron Man. Female. What?
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yup. Iron Man translates female.
I am so gonna go flex on my dad right now.
So there. My significant other, this drives him insane. He is absolutely the biggest Marvel fan for his whole life. Everything Marvel. He's like a comic book Marvel guy. You know, he gets into the backstories, the whole thing. I'm a big Marvel fan, but not nearly to his degree. Hard no. And so, of course, you know, you find a button. What do you want to do with it? Push it. And it drives him insane when I'm like, Iron Man should have been a woman. Oh, sometimes he just will stop talking to me altogether. Someday you guys might meet him. Someday he might be here when we're doing this on Zoom. All right, let's talk about atoms. Again, total review. So atoms contain 3 major components. They are the smallest unit of any element. They are composed of protons. Does anybody know what kind of charge a proton has?
Positive.
Nice, it's positive. Proton. Positive. How about our neutron?
Negative.
So actually, our neutron is neutral, and then our electron is negative. And so these are the main components of an atom. Our neutrons and our protons are going to be found here in the nucleus. Our electrons are going to rotate in a cloud. Now, this is important. This is kind of one of the things that I never really gave much thought to. We always look, everybody in this class right now has seen a picture like this of an atom. Everybody. If you have been at school at any point in your life, you have seen a picture of an atom similar to this. But it makes us think that the electrons are in orbit around the nucleus like planets around the sun. It's not the case. And this is going to be a really important concept when we start talking about bonding. The electrons of the atoms are more of a cloud. And they're kind of jiggly wiggly. Here's what they look like, okay? In the summer, oh my God, I hate it when this happens. in the summertime, you're having a great day, you're just walking through the yard, and suddenly you walk into this entire humongous cloud of tiny insects. I don't know what you guys call them. In Canada, we call them no-see-ums because you don't see them. You no-see them. We call them no-see-ums. And so they're tiny little black flies, and you don't even see the cloud until you're into the middle of it. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, everyone's done that, and suddenly you're like, oh. Okay, so when you walk into that cloud, your head is now the nucleus containing your protons and neutrons. The cloud of bugs around you, those are now acting like what the electrons act like in the atom. We can have the cloud swarm a little bit more to one side versus the other. And this is important because that's going to change the charges on either side. The more electrons gathered, the more negative the charge will be. The less electrons gathered, the less the charge will be. And so it's this cloud of no-see-ums that are functioning kind of like our electrons. All right, so as I said, our protons and neutrons are found in the nucleus. The nucleus is at the center of our atom. Now, this is going to be important. I'm not even going to make a, try and be subtle. I'm going to test you over this. When we do our chapter 2 test, I'm going to ask you what two components of the atom make up the atomic weight. That is going to be a question on your test. So everyone will get it right because I've told you specifically. So our protons and neutrons make up our atomic weight. Protons have a positive, neutrons have a neutral. That's pretty much it. Oh, and the net charge is neutral because generally in nature, if all is well, we have the exact same number of protons and electrons. Now, every single person in here is too young, and I hate you that you're all fetuses. I hate it. So way back, okay, maybe not way back, okay, let me give myself a little bit of props here. I'm not that old. There was a show, it was fantastic, and you could probably watch the reruns. It was hysterical. It was called WKRP in Cincinnati. And it was this comedy show that was about this little tiny radio station. And why am I bringing this up? Because when I first started teaching this about anatomy, about atoms, it jogged a memory in me. So one of the disc jockeys on this comedy show was named Venus Flytrap. I don't know. And he had this scene where he was trying to help this troubled boy, and the boy wanted to drop out of school. And Venus Flytrap says, I'll tell you what, if I can teach you about the atom in 3 minutes, you get to go back to school. And the guy was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. He was like doing this real, you know, I'm a thug and meh. He's like, yeah, whatever, bro. Whatever, brah. I'm super street. You know what? A Canadian is not allowed to be street. We just don't do it. It's just not in our nature. So what he did, and I found this really fascinating, and I actually uploaded this video into my website. It does not really translate for today, but I thought it was really kind of an interesting little analogy that Venus Flytrap used. So basically what he did was, all right, erase. All right, so basically what he did was he was talking about these 3 groups of friends in this neighborhood. And the first group of friends Well, I mean, he was calling them gangs. I don't like that. I want to call them groups of friends. So the first group of friends, they had their group name and they were called the Pros. And they were super happy, super go-lucky. Everything was going their way. We had another group, get a different color here, and they called themselves the New Boys. And they didn't really have an opinion on anything. They were just kind of content to be invited to the party. Out here, around the outside of this neighborhood, we have the really kind of dangerous group of friends, and they were called the Elected Ones. And they were super angry all the time. And the problem is that the Pros and the Elected Ones, they didn't get along very well. And so they wanted to make sure that they had the same number of Pros as the same number of electrons. If the elected ones got a member, the Pros needed a member. If the elected ones lost a member, the Pros would lose a member. They wanted to maintain balance. Well, after a group meeting, they discovered this brand new word, and it was called Tron. And what this word Tron meant was most important. It's not exactly what Tron means, it's just for the story. But the most important, the pinnacle of your career, you are now huzzah of your life. And so every group decided that they wanted to be the huzzah of their life. And so they all changed their names. And so in the middle, our Pros became, whoops, come on. Come on. My pen's not working. There. Sorry, draw. That would help, wouldn't it? So our Pros became what? Our Protons. Our Elected Ones became Electrons, and our Neutrals became our Neutrons. And it's just important to remember, the electrons are the ones that are patrolling the neighborhood. The Protons are the ones who don't get along. They repel each other. They don't like each other at all. They want to maintain the same membership numbers. The Neutrons just happy to be invited to the party. So those are all of the parts of the neutron. If you want to go in, excuse me, and see the clip, it is super dated. It is probably from like the late 70s. But it's fabulous. It's campy. The guy they have playing this high school student appears to be in his mid-40s. So it's pretty funny. The casting was terrible. The casting was so bad, but it's a great show. Yeah, just like in Grease. It appears to be in his mid-30s. This one was even worse though, because honestly, the guy, he's supposed to be like the 16, 17-year-old kid. Go on my website under the anatomy tab with the drop down. You're going to see the videos. Sometime this weekend, go watch it. It's campy. And when you see who is playing the high school student, he looks older than the adult guy who's lecturing to him. All right, so what are electrons? Tiny particles. Now the thing is about electrons, they are so super tiny, so super small, that they don't add anything to the weight of the atom. They don't contribute anything to the weight. They do have a negative charge, and they're in a cloud. Remember the no-see-ums? They're in a cloud around the nucleus. And so these are going to, or this is going to determine what area of the atom is going to be more negative or more positive, depending on the side of the atom that is accumulating the electrons. So here's just a couple of pictures for you visual learners. Anybody who's ever watched the show Big Bang Theory has seen this. I was actually watching a couple of episodes of that last night. I own every season. It's one of my favorite shows. One of those that I can put on the background. And I just, when I'm doing other stuff, doing schoolwork or housework, I just put it on the background. I love it. All right, so here's the second test question everyone's going to get right. The number of protons gives us our atomic number. So we have now determined what gives us the atomic weight and what gives us the atomic number. Both of these are going to be questions on your test. Nobody can fault me for not making it clear. I have video proof that I have been very concise about what is going to be on your next test. All right, so typically we don't gain or lose protons or neutrons, typically. And I know those of you that have had some advanced chemistry classes are like, that's not true, Ms. Huff. Scratch the surface. We're scratching the surface. Typically, what we're going to be looking at is that these atoms are going to either lose or gain electrons. And what that's going to do is change the overall charge. So here I have my atom, right? There's my electrons, which are negative. In here, I have my protons and my neutrons. If I have the same number of electrons and protons, do you see how my charge is going to be neutral? I have the same number of negatives that are canceling out the same number of positives. But what happens if I add an electron? I now have another extra negative electron. So I have one more negative electron, then I have positive protons. What do you think happens to the charge of the atom when this happens? Does anyone have a guess?
It moves negative?
Yeah, if I have more negative electrons than positive protons, it goes negative. I'm going to be more negative. If I lose an electron, I go ping and I donate it to someone else. And now I have more protons than electrons. Now what's happened to my charge?
Positive.
Positive.
It's turned more positive. Good. If I gain or lose this electron, we call this now an ion. If I have a different number of electrons than protons because I've gained or lost an electron, we now call that an ion. In some rare cases, I may actually have a different number of neutrons. We're not going to get into the reasons why. Again, this is not organic chemistry. I'm talking about terminology. If I have a different number of neutrons, it's called an isotope. So ion, isotope, these are just terms, no different than medical terminology. I know this stuff is dry, guys. I get it. You're like, oh my God, I want to carve my own eyeballs out of my skull. I get it. It is not the most interesting stuff on the planet. However, if you stick with me, we're going to get through the dry stuff and we're going to get into some super fun stuff. We're going to talk about, oh my God, DNA and genetic mutations. And we're going to talk about scrambling DNA because of radiation and how gamma radiation could, in fact, create a Hulk-like creature. Maybe not transitioning back and forth because you can't really manipulate DNA like that, at least not in the real non-comic world. But we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about how our cells have evolved from like, oh my gosh. It's crazy the stuff we're going to talk about. So let's get through the boring stuff and then we get to the important stuff. It's just like you got to eat your vegetables before you get your dessert. All right, here we have a couple of just examples. Here were our major elements that we just talked about. We have our carbon, our oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen. So what we're looking at here, if you look here at this atomic number, what this is referring to is the number of electrons here in the shell. So here, little hydrogen has the atomic number of 1, which means we only have 1 electron. Now, this is kind of important when it gets to hydrogen, because we're going to learn, okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself right now, but that's okay. We are going to learn that these atoms have, erase, get all this off. All right, atoms have these shells. Okay, you can see here on carbon, we have the first shell, the second shell, and then we could even have shells here, etc., etc. And each of these shells can house a certain number of electrons. In this most inner shell, the maximum number of electrons that can be in this innermost shell is 2. And in fact, we want to. The whole point behind everything we're about to talk about, as far as bonds, sharing electrons, donating electrons, accepting electrons, has to do with getting even Stevenness. Our atoms want to become balanced, kind of like us, right? We want to achieve balance. We want to achieve Zen. We want to be fulfilled. The reason why all of that happens to us is because on a molecular level, it's the same thing. Our atoms want to be fulfilled. And in order to be fulfilled, their shells have to be full. And so here's little hydrogen. Now, in some cases, I can go ahead and donate. Like, for example, when I am looking at sodium and chloride. We have one that's got only 1 in the outermost shell, and it's just gonna ping it, get rid of it. Hydrogen can't do that. If I donate this electron to someone, am I still considered an atom? No, because then I don't have any electrons left. So hydrogen's only hope to obtaining personal fulfillment is to get one from someone else. This is what provides that slippery slope for our H2O. So here you can see carbon has 6 in the outermost layer. So here we have our 2, huzzah, fulfilled. Here in the second layer, I've got 4. The problem is, how many do I want? I want 8. So I've got to get 4 more electrons to fulfill myself. So here we have an example of isotope. We just talked about it, terminology. So this is just a picture for you guys. These are all different isotopes of carbon. What's kind of interesting about these isotopes of carbon is that some of these isotopes, we can use them to figure out how badly they've decayed. And that can help us date things. Like when you get the dinosaur bones and they're like, oh, we did the carbon dating, it's 14 million years old. Okay, what does that mean? Well, what they've basically done is they've taken these carbon molecules and they are able to measure how much have they decayed. It's actually called the rate of decay. And they know the rate for these specific atoms, these specific isotopes, and they know if we have a certain level of decay, how long did it take to get there? So here we have our sodium, and here I have, look at this, I got one sad little electron on the third shell. The third shell wants to have 8. So what the atom's really doing is the thing that's going to provide the least amount of energy being used. All right, so that's the whole thing. Atoms are not only wanting to be fulfilled, guys, I anthropomorphize everything. I give human emotions to everything. Atoms, they want to be fulfilled, but they don't want to have a whole lot of energy expended to do it, right? They don't want to have to try all that hard to obtain their fulfillment. They're going to take the path of least resistance. So would it take less energy to get rid of 1 electron or pick up 7 electrons? Which is going to take more energy? Get rid of 1, pick up 7.
Get rid of 1.
Yeah, I just gonna pew, pew, okay, pew. I just flick it off. I'm just gonna flick off that electron. So all I gotta do to do this is hook up with someone that needs 1 electron. Someone like who? Oh, I don't know, chloride. Well, what happens to the charge of this sodium when I kick out a negative electron? I now have less negative electrons.
It turns positive.
It's gonna turn more positive. And it is this change in charge, gained or lost an electron, that makes it an ion. Okay, now our chloride, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but our chloride has picked up that electron. There's my electron. So now it has more electrons than protons. What has happened to the charge of my chloride?
It's negative.
Thank you. Thank you, Shanae. I got one person who is actually interacting with me right now. Who is
I'm
drinking out of,
interacting the whole class.
it looks like you're drinking out of a mason jar. It is a mason jar. I love that. I love it.
Like little, what is that called? Like, not catacombs. What am I talking about? Like little bumblebee. Honeycomb.
It's adorable.
Thank you.
All right, so very well done, Shanae. Chloride is now going to take on an overall negative charge, also becoming an ion. Whenever we gain or lose an electron, we become an ion. But what do we know about opposites? Anybody?
What do you mean?
They attract?
Yeah, that's it. Hey guys, I know you guys are like, opposites, ions, blah, blah, blah. No, opposites attract. Opposites attract. I now have a more positively charged sodium, a more negatively charged chloride. Oh my God, sparks are in the air. It is Match.com for atoms. And this has been a match. And they're going to be attracted to each other. They're going to hang out with each other. This is a specific type of bond that we've now made. We have found atomic love. Match.com, atomic love. I know you guys don't use Match or eHarmony. You're too young for that, but that's the only two I know. I guess there's a bunch more, isn't there? There's literally an online match thing depending on, I think there's like an Amish farmer match.com, although how would they use it? They don't have computers. I'm just saying. Anyway, so we've got now this match, positive and negative coming together. It's beautiful relationship. What kind of bond did we just make? So we have two ions, right? Ion is we've gained and lost electrons. So what do we have? Ionic bond. What did the suffix "ic" refer to?
Pertaining to.
Right there. Pertaining to. So what is the literal definition of an ionic bond? Pertaining to ions. Med term, everywhere. Med term is everywhere, guys. Now that you guys have started learning your medical terminology, do you not start seeing it literally everywhere? TV shows, words you use all the time. It's everywhere, everywhere. Ionic bond, pertaining to ions that are bonded. All right, this is just going over that concept I mentioned earlier, the rate of disintegration. We can use these carbon isotopes to measure rock and phosphorus, can't talk today, fossil age. So when we are looking at, you know, the little bit of dirt and he's like, yeah, this is 16 million years old. This is how they know, because they've gone through this radioactive rate of decay. I'm not getting into too much of this. I just found it interesting that it's a carbon isotope that they use to kind of have their base setting. All right, so the electron shell. This is where the electrons are in a cloud around the nucleus. And we do have electrons that can be a little bit more active. I really do look at the atom like a tiny little community, like a tiny little household. You have some people in the household. Okay, this whole household, though, super negative. The electrons are just the grumpy gusses of the whole house. But yeah, some that are really kind of lazy. They're not really have a lot of energy. And so if you think about, okay, again, you know, you guys are starting to learn how my brain works. So the electrons are around the house. If we think of the nucleus as their house, in fact, you know what? I want to do this. I'm doing it. And you know what? It's my class and I have you all trapped in TV land and there's nothing you can do about it right now. You're just along for the ride. There's absolutely, you're at the mercy of my whims right now. And I love it. That makes me happy. All right, so if we think of the nucleus as the little house, all right, and these are where the happy neutral people are. And our electrons are the negative people, and they're just pacing around the house. Honestly, the happy-go-lucky positive energy kind of irritates them, and they're not really happy with that. However, we have some that are more adventurous than others. In this first shell, remember, we want to, well, because these guys are kind of lazy, they don't have a lot of energy, they're going to stick close to home. They don't want to venture out. They don't want to go to the outer limits of the cloud. They want to stick pretty close to home. The more active the electron is, the further away they're going to go from the shell. So, yes, you are my minion, Stephanie, and I'm happy that you finally come to terms with that fact. Because your mind, and here's the other funny thing. You think that you're only mine for the time that you're in school. No, I will be in your brain for the rest of your life. Just saying. I'm gonna be living rent-free right here. All right,
Oh,
so
not rent free.
heck yeah, rent-free. I don't pay
No,
rent to live in.
frontal
I don't pay rent to live in your brain.
You doing this one?
I don't pay rent to live in your brain. Oh, thank God it's Friday. All right, so the energy level will determine which shell the electron's going to inhabit. So as I said, the lesser energies are going to remain closer to home, and then the more and more energy they have, the further and further away they're going to go. If the shells are not full, no, you can have your own hamsters. And what I mean by rent-free is little things like there's going to be times, and I'm not trying to do a burr, but there are things that you will remember, kind of like the directional dance. I think first period yesterday, a few of you may have been in the library when some of the Onyx came in, and I was discussing with them, oh yeah, we did the directional dance. Now, guys, I hate to tell you this shocking bit of news. You're not the first class I've done that to. Right? It works. It works. Getting your bodies moving. It works. I do it with every class. And so the minute that I said the directional dance, what did they both start doing? Both of these Onyx, who are seniors, who I haven't taught in forever, immediately left. Right. Cranial, prosper. They even remembered the order. So that's living free right there. Okay, so if I have an electron that has a shell that's not full, we want to obtain fulfillment. We want to be satisfied. So they're going to be more active. They are looking for something and they're going to be active about it. They want to find someone to donate this electron or borrow an electron or share an electron to reach fulfillment. It's really a very romantic story if you think about it. Creation of these atomic bonds really is just how a fundamental, we seek out a partner that fulfills us. Now we got two elements. So I know some of you are like, I don't need no partner to fulfill me. What are you talking about? I'm just happy by myself. Man. Okay, well, I got an analogy for you too. Okay, so maybe you're not trying to find a partner. You still fit into my anatomic little community because I got two elements here, helium and neon. Guess what? Their outer shells already full. They don't need no one. They don't need nothing. They don't have any electrons to donate. They don't have any electrons that they need to get rid of. They have none that they need to take in. Everything is satisfied. They are what we call inert. And what that means is they are all fine all by themselves. So even though you might be like, Ms. Huff, I don't fit into this analogy. I'm happy all alone. Joke's on you. Joke's on you. You do fit into my analogy. You're inert. Meaning that you don't need anything else to be fulfilled. I don't know about you guys, but I do find it a little bit easier if I start creating these little stories in my mind. If I start making the atoms into a community, I give them personalities, I give them wants, I give them hopes. I don't know, it makes me happy. So our first shell contains 2, second shell contains 8, and so on and so forth. Now we're not going any further than that. I know you can have, you know, infinite number of shells. We're going to like 2, maybe 3. So the first one contains 2, second one contains 8, then 8, then 8, then 8. And here we have, look, there's helium. There's those of you strong, independent people who don't need nothing from no one. You don't have anything to give. You have nothing you want. You're inert. I've already got 2 electrons in the outermost shell. I don't want to give one away because then I'm not satisfied. And I certainly don't want to pick one up because then that means I got to get 7 more. He's not looking for anything, or she. All right, this is, oh my goodness, time flies when we're having fun, guys. Holy smokes. That's crazy. I just got caught in a time warp. The last time I looked at my clock, it was like 10 to 8. All right, so we are going to, you know what, let me just do these terms and then we'll pick it up at this right after these terms. So these are just terminology. What is a molecule when atoms are joined together? We're going to talk about the different way that they're bonded. We have ionic bonds, which we just talked about, where we donate, pick up, and then have opposites attract. You also have covalent, where sharing is caring. The molecule of an element is where we have 2 atoms from the same element joined together. Again, guys, this is just terminology. Your bonds are how they're attached. Are they covalently attached? Are they ionically attached? Or are we using the specialized hydrogen bond? And finally, our compound is made up of 2 or more different elements. So those are our terms. So on Monday, we're going to pick it up here. Don't forget, test opens today at 3. It will close tomorrow at noon. The photo that it's referring to, I want to make sure everyone is clear. And I now have it on video. So when you come back to me, you're like, Ms. Huff, it was referring to a photo and there was no photo and I didn't know what to do and I think I failed. Yeah, that's how you sound in my head sometimes. And then I'm going to go, I would like you to refer to the YouTube video from Friday because watch this. Okay, there is, every student right now, look in my eyes. There is a photo on Moodle. It is a Word document. It is right under where the quiz is found. You need to open that photo, print it out, put it on your wall, put it in a frame, color it. I don't care. Download it. That is the photo that the test is referring to. So it's crystal clear. It is on video. So if anybody comes back and says, nobody told me that there was a photo extra on the test, I'm going to say you need to refer to the video because I mentioned it 178 times.
What about the Epson people?
Well, they have access to this video at some point. All right. So, any comments, questions, concerns?
Sorry I was late dropping off my Midgey poo.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you for letting me know. Did anyone else come in late? Who was I missing? I'm missing.
did.
Who is I did?
Six. Rebecca Barnes. I looked at my watch and apparently I closed my eyes again.
So Rebecca Barnes. So I am missing, just to make sure, Erica, Amanda, and Tavanna.
Erica's here.
Erica's here. Fabulous. Okay. All right. So everybody have a great day. Zoe Hedge, I'm going to have you hang out with me for a minute afterwards. Everyone else have a fabulous weekend. Wish me luck on my own test that I'm taking today.
Good luck. Good.
Thank
You're gonna ace
you.
it.
Have a great weekend, guys.
You too.
Good
Bye.
luck. See you Monday.
Bye.
Miss Huff, I still have a question. Since I submitted it completely, can you